In this video, I'm going to share one of the most fascinating and disturbing accounts of out-of-body experience ever recorded, the experiences of Robert Monroe. We're going to step through what he claimed happened and then unpack what it might actually mean. On this channel, The Other Singularity, we explore the potential civilization-shifting consequences of embracing the idea of the extended mind, that mind extends beyond the brain, and that we humans can sometimes perceive things beyond our immediate location and indeed time. One of the most common and controversial experiences linked to this idea is out-of-body experiences. In this video, we're going to explore Robert Monroe's bizarre experiences and ask, what do these kind of seemingly paranormal events actually mean? And if they're true, even partially, what would that imply about the nature of consciousness? The following clips you're about to see come from a recent short video I created and posted here on The Other Singularity. That video offers a brief overview of Robert Monroe's out-of-body experiences with minimal commentary. Let's begin with the introduction. Robert Monroe, a pioneer of out-of-body experience research and founder of the Monroe Institute, documented something extraordinary in his 1971 book, Journeys Out of the Body. During his experiments with altered states, Monroe claimed to discover what he called Locale III, a parallel Earth. He reached this realm by inducing a vibrational state and then rotating out of his body. This opened what he described as a kind of doorway in space. Now here Monroe says he was able to rotate himself out of his body. Now that might seem unusual, but this idea of movement, of shifting position, actually shows up often in reports of out-of-body experiences. There's often some kind of transition, a shift in physical orientation or relationship with the body, almost as if consciousness has to disengage from the body before it can move anywhere. Now, I've had many experiences myself, mostly when I was younger, admittedly, that I would describe as out-of-body, or at least very close to that state. Yet I never experienced this idea of rotation. For me, it was different. It would often begin in a dream state, a lucid awareness where I suddenly realized I was dreaming, while asleep of course, and then came a kind of decision. If this is a dream, I can fly, or even fly out of my body. In one dream experience, I remember launching upward, shooting into the sky, passing through a concentric rainbow-like layers above me. There was a great whooshing sound, as if air or some other kind of energy was passing through me, and I was passing through some kind of tunnel or vortex. I then emerged into something that didn't resemble a physical world at all. No buildings, no Earth-like environment, just space. Or something beyond space. So the form of such OBEs can vary a lot. But let's go back to Monroe's account. At first, there was only darkness. Then, a human hand reached out. On another occasion, a voice called his name. Bob, Bob! It seemed something or someone was aware of him. Here Monroe hears a voice calling his name, and it seems that something or someone was aware of him. Now once again, this kind of experience is actually not that unusual in out-of-body experience reports. Across many anecdotes of out-of-body experiences, people describe hearing voices, encountering other beings, or even communicating in ways that seemingly don't involve the physical senses. So, up to this point, Monroe's experience, while certainly strange and outside the bounds of accepted science, still sits within a broader pattern. There's nothing here that clearly sets it apart from many other OBE accounts. But what comes next is very different. Because Monroe didn't just observe something, he discovered another world. Let's continue. Eventually, Monroe crossed over. What he found was unsettling. Locale III looked almost identical to our world. Cities, trees, people, but there were crucial differences. There was no electricity, no phones, no lights. Technology was steam-based. Cars were wide and slow. It wasn't the past. It was something else entirely, a parallel version of Earth. At this point, Monroe claims to have entered what he calls a parallel Earth, a world that closely resembles our own, but with clear differences. Now, reports of moving into other realms do exist, but what Monroe is describing here is more specific. This isn't just an abstract or symbolic space. It's a structured world, with people, with systems. That's something very interesting indeed, because The idea of encountering a version of Earth that is similar, but not identical to ours, immediately raises deeper questions. One possibility is that such an alternative Earth is part of the so-called multiverse, a scientific hypothesis put forward by physicists like Hugh Everett III. Everett's many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics seems to imply that multiple versions of reality may exist in parallel. Later, physicist Max Tegmark suggested that there may be multiple levels of parallel universes. Now, I'm not claiming those kinds of ideas explain experiences like Robert Monroe's, but they do invite speculation. Perhaps they are related in some way. Now, let's go back to Monroe's account, because what happens next pushes this even further. Then things got stranger. Monroe encountered a man who appeared to be his double, a parallel version of himself. At times, Monroe would intrude into this man's body, briefly taking control. But he didn't understand the context of that life. He made mistakes, social errors, even crashed a vehicle he didn't know how to drive. This caused real consequences. The man had fallen in love with a woman named Leah, but Monroe's intrusions disrupted the relationship. Confusion grew. Trust broke down. Eventually, they separated. As we can note at this point, Monroe's account takes on a very different tone. This is no longer just exploration. There are consequences for the choices he makes. A relationship breaks down. A life is disrupted. And that brings us to a deeper idea. The possibility that consciousness can move not just out of the body, but into another one. Now, this isn't a new idea. We see variations of it in science fiction. For example, in the movie Avatar, human consciousness can be projected into another biological body, an alien in that case. In the work of futurist Ray Kurzweil, we see the idea of uploading the mind into digital systems, an idea that has become a popular idea today. These ideas have a commonality, a similar underlying assumption, that consciousness is not permanently tied to a single physical form. But in Monroe's account, this process isn't entirely controlled. It seems to be unstable with unintended impacts, and in this case, damaging. Let's return to Monroe's final visit to Locale III. In a final visit, Monroe found his double alone, heartbroken, unable to find Leah again. It was messy, emotional, human. Now, before I add my final thoughts, I want you to hear how I framed this in my original short video. And if true, it raises a disturbing question. What if other versions of you are out there and you're interfering with their lives? That question cuts deeper than it first appears, because we aren't just exploring the idea of parallel worlds, but questioning the nature of identity itself. We tend to think of ourselves as a single, continuous individual, contained within one body. But Monroe's experience suggests that human identity and agency may be less clearly defined than we think. For consciousness may not be entirely anchored. It may even shift, overlap, intrude. And if that's the case, then the boundary between you and me and another version of you may not be as solid as you think. The entire idea of the non-local mind begs the question, where does my mind end and another's begin? If minds are not purely contained in individual skulls, then we are all likely entangled with each other, and possibly with animals, plants, or perhaps interdimensional and even alien consciousness structures. OBEs force us to expand the question. Can consciousness leave the body? But they also invite us to ask what happens when the mind doesn't stay where it's supposed to be. What are the consequences for the other lives our minds impact? Indeed, a common theme for people who have near-death experiences, those who seemingly leave the body for a time and travel to another realm of existence, is the revelation of how much of their own thoughts and attitudes have impacted those they are in relationship with in their lives, regardless of physical distance apart. This is where the idea of the non-local mind stops being abstract and starts becoming personal. So what about you? Do you believe that out-of-body experiences like Monroe's are real, or are they merely imagined? And have you ever had an OBE or even an NDE? I'd love to hear your accounts in the comments section below. In future videos, I'll explore other cases like this and what they might tell us about the nature of the mind itself. So don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as it will help me keep creating many more. I'm Marcus T. Anthony. See you again soon here on The Other Singularity.